welcome to Spark TV.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to have you here. I know that this is going to be a very interesting chat for lots of women in business. So let's kick things off by telling everyone who you are and what you do.
I am Amy Fox. I'm an accountant, but I'm not a tax accountant. So a lot of people don't even know there's different types of accountants, but I'm what's called a management accountant, and I focus on helping businesses make more profit and not worrying so much about the tax consequences of that. So when you make more money, you pay more tax, and that's just like the world we live in. So I just focus on making as much money as possible and then managing the cash so that you can pay your tax obligations like stress-free.
Yeah, and that is so interesting, isn't it? I feel like a lot of people dread the tax bill. And because of it being a cash flow problem, I think we've associated tax as bad. So rather than focusing on managing cash flow, we're focused on reducing tax or not paying tax, or I don't want to earn more because I don't want to pay more tax. Like we've kind of got the script flipped.
Yeah, it's a bit backwards to come in it from an angle of like paying the least tax possible. I always think of it like if you had a job and your boss said, "Congratulations, you've got a $20,000 pay rise." Like, is the first thing you're going to think, "Shit, I'm going to have to pay more tax now," or "Yay, I'm making an extra 20 grand." Like, but when you become a business owner, I don't know why this is the case, like how this has happened, but everyone is so focused on that tax bill and reducing it.
Mm.
And I'm just like, the ways to reduce your tax bill are to earn less or spend more. And I'm like, that is the opposite of making money. So yeah, it's just like such a retraining to think of it from a different perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting, like the employee example, like, I guess because the employer looks after the tax component, it's almost like all employees think about is what is my take home pay? Like, what is the
Yeah.
thing that is hitting my bank account? And, that almost that there's not a light shone on how much tax you paid, maybe until the end of financial year when your accountant's like, what can we deduct to try
Yes.
and get a little bit back?
Yeah.
Um, but again, when you're in a bigger tax bracket anyway, the likelihood of getting anything back at the end of the year diminishes, I think.
Yes. It gets harder and harder to
Mm.
do it like legally anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. But I think when we're business owners, there is this like, oh shit, every quarter I seem to be like not able to pay my tax bill for some people that aren't managing, don't think about like separate accounts or setting money aside or even I think a lot of people even when they're mapping out their products and services, they don't even think about like, well, what portion is going to tax?
Yeah.
They kind of think, well, I charge $1,000 for social media management, therefore that's my money. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not your
I
money.
know. And then you add GST into the mix, and that's another one that's like
Mm.
really not thought about in, I think, the right way as well by a lot of business owners. Like so many business owners, like, I need to reduce my BAS bill. I need to pay less GST. And
Mm.
the thing with GST is it's never been your money. It's not your money. So you actually, like, when you send your $1,000 invoice, it's plus GST, and your client is paying you the GST.
Yeah.
And now you're a business owner. Congratulations. You basically work for the ATO and you collect GST and then give it to the ATO quarterly when you do your BAS. So that thinking about like, how do I reduce that? It's the wrong way to think about it. It's how do I manage that money? That money's not mine. That's my
Mm.
client's money and I need to give it to the ATO. So it's just like so simple. Separate it out into a separate bank account. Don't think of it as your money. And then just there's no stress when you pay your BAS bill because it's sitting there ready to go.
Yeah.
And I've been a business owner like of a physical store. So I had inventory. Oh my God, so much inventory. So the BAS bills, they were huge. And it is so tempting when things are a little bit tight to just be like, I'll just dip into that and
Dip
I'll
into that account. Yeah.
later on Amy can deal with that. But yeah, it's such a trap when you've spent it and then you're constantly behind because you can
Mm.
never get ahead because you've spent that money that wasn't yours,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you're trying to save for the next one and pay off the last one. It's just like, and you get into such a tough cycle then. And I think that's when it gets really like, shit, how do I reduce my BAS bill? Because I just simply can't pay it. But it's such
Mm.
an exercise in managing your cash.
So how do we do that? Like what is that? Well, you mentioned separating it out. Is that the best strategy? Like how should someone think about the money that's coming into their business?
Yeah, I think I'm such a big fan of profit first. I don't necessarily love the percentages. So
Mhm.
I think you don't have to be super prescriptive when you read profit first to be like, okay, I need to set out this percentage and that percentage. Because, like, I think it's 50% is owners' wages. And for some businesses, that's just like not feasible at all.
Some people don't have that much margin in their business.
Exactly. It depends
Yeah.
what type of business you're running too. Like if you're a
Mm.
consultant and you work from home and you've got no overheads, like maybe you can do that. But if you've got a physical store and staff to pay and products and slimmer margins, that's just like not feasible. So the principles are awesome to separate out the money. And it
Mm.
goes into a lot of the like psychology of how you think about money. And I always tell my clients this, like, it's not your fault. It's just like how we're built to, if
Yeah.
we see money, we spend money.
Yes.
So if you think of it as not your money and it's in a separate account, you're so much less likely to spend it. But if it goes, cash flow is like a washing machine. Like you put everything in, it spins around for however long, and sometimes you might be able to take some out at the end. If it's all in the same washing machine, it's all mixed up. You don't know
Mm.
whose is whose. It's super messy. It gets spent on like the wrong things, and then you get in trouble and you're on the back foot, trying to fix it for like 12 months. It
Mm.
can like cash flow can be super tough to get on top of once you're behind. Um, so yeah, I'm such a fan of the profit first principles. Separate out your money. Don't think of it as being yours. Like really don't dip into it,
Yeah.
and just you'll never get behind.
That's such good advice too, because I think that, a lot of people even think about like I should just be putting everything through the business, like
Yes.
everything should be a business
Yeah.
expense. So then therefore the card just comes out and it's paying for my morning coffee, my
And like,
this, my
yay, this
that.
is free because like the business
Yeah,
paid for it.
totally. And then
Yeah.
yeah, and then you get to the end of the month and you're like, did I even make any money? Like, did I have an income? Because that's a really interesting thing that I'm hearing a lot of people, like women in business, talk about right now is like actually even paying themselves ever,
Yeah.
like it's different. I think you mentioned before, like what kind of business do you have? I think a lot of like product-based businesses or like tech startups, the idea of making money like as a wage is almost you don't do it, you raise capital or investing back into the business.
Yeah.
But I think like you said, if you're a consultant and you've got higher margins and it is just you working on there, it's a little bit easier to pay yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just think that even that, like thinking about whether something is a wage, something is a business expense,
Yeah.
we really do have to like reset our mindset around this.
Yes. I'm not a fan of like making up business expenses just for their tax deduction. Like, I think that's a really slippery slope. Like,
Mm,
then you're overspending because you're thinking, yay, like it's a deduction. And then you just get a bit spend happy and it's still your money. I think a lot of
yeah.
people, when you go into business, it becomes a bit like monopoly money.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, it's coming in, it's going out. But it's like your money. So
Mm,
if you thought about it in terms of how much you get to keep and how much you want to be paying yourself, it becomes like a little bit different to, are you spending $1 to save like 25 cents and get the tax deduction? Is
Mm.
that a smart way to spend $1 to save 25 cents? Like it still needs to have a return on investment. I think people are just like, yeah, you put it through the business tax deduction, but did you get a return on that? Or was it
Mm.
just like a total waste of money because you wanted a tax deduction?
Yeah. And then,
Mm.
I guess then it does come to that end of quarter or end of year, and you're kind of looking at the bigger picture numbers and asking yourself, what am I even doing here? Like,
Yeah.
is this business viable? Is it profitable? Is it helping me get towards my goals? I think that's the real like trap of not compartmentalizing everything and not paying yourself and just running everything through the business and just thinking I'll sort it out
Yeah.
later. I think that can be a real trap for people. They get to that end of that period and they're just like, did I just work for free?
Yeah. And a lot of the time the answer is yes. Like it's your business might have paid for a bit of your lifestyle
Mm,
in those like getting those sneaky deductions through. But yeah, I mean, I've seen so many businesses which from the outside you think are going amazingly well, and then the
mm,
profit is just not there. And you were talking before about reinvesting back into the business and not necessarily drawing a wage. I'm such a big fan of drawing a wage, like as soon as you can, even if it's $50 a week or something. Like,
yeah.
I think a lot of people get into the trap of, I'm building up an asset which is valuable, or like I'll pay myself when X happens. And it's sometimes X never comes around, and then you feel so disheartened. Normally, 3 years in is when you start to feel quite disheartened that you've invested so much time and energy and effort into the business and
Mm,
money, and you're not getting back what you've put in. It's like a bit of an energetic, in a woo-woo way. It's an energetic exchange. Like you've put so much energy into the business.
yeah.
3 years, if it's not coming back to you, you start to feel not great about it. And you can start to feel like a bit of bitterness towards your business. So if you can start even drawing like a super small wage, like it doesn't have to be much, just get into that habit and then build it into your costs. I think a lot of time, like you think, I'll buy this thing for $10 and I'll sell it for $20 and yay, I've made $10 on it. But you haven't added in, like you said, you haven't added in tax, you haven't added in your overheads. I think that's a
Mm,
real problem people get into, where they don't spread that overhead costs. And it's not easy to do. Um, Spreading the overhead costs into your expense, into your products. Like you
mm,
actually need to assign that cost as a product cost, and it needs to cover it. It needs to be, you need to sell it for enough to cover it. um which is kind of like, I was in business myself and I noticed that no accountants were doing this. I was trying to work with an external party because you're emotionally invested in your business, you're super close to it. Sometimes you're a bit blind to what's going on.
mm,
I would have just loved someone to look over it from a profitability perspective. Like tax,
mm.
I was like, in a way, tax is what it is. It's laws, it's compliance. You make money, you pay tax. That's just like part of life.
Yeah.
But you get to decide how much money you make. That is the one thing that you can control in a way. So I was like, who can help me with just like looking over the profitability of the business? And there was just no one doing it.
Mm.
So I was an accountant. I worked for really big manufacturing companies like Peter's Ice Cream.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, I'm going to start my own wellness business.
Just total
So
step change.
just
Yeah.
like huge. I was going through, I had endometriosis. I was going through like a big
Oh,
wellness
no.
journey myself. And I
Yeah.
was switching to like low tox everything. And I was obsessed. and I started my business. I was selling low tox, like skincare, makeup, cleaning products, and we had float tanks and an infrared sauna. So I had both products and services. So it was such a good mix in terms of like I made a lot of margin on the services, especially because there was no staff. Like it was sauna and float tank, so there's no staff cost there. And then selling other people's products, not the most amazing margin ever. So the volume had to be quite high.
Mm.
But yeah, it was so interesting going from like looking at the profitability of a huge business like Peter's and then going into a small business myself. I can't remember how I ended up on this tangent, but
No, well, it was interesting. I think like even just the journey, like, I think a lot of people start businesses because they like, oh, I'm an accountant or I'm a this, I've got the skill. And then they kind of get in and they forget about all of that kind of stuff. But how cool that you could actually transfer those skills into a completely different business. What was that transition like? Like how did you feel looking at Peters and then looking at yourself, and was that a bit of a, oh, this isn't what I expected it to be, or was it this is better? Like how did that feel for you?
in terms of like the actual work, I loved it. So I absolutely loved. I had a physical store. I loved doing the fit out. I loved sourcing all the products. Like it was so fun for me. And in
Mm,
those first couple of years, I think I was working like 7 days a week and I just loved every second.
yeah.
Just, I'm obsessed with business. I think it's just so exciting.
Yeah.
And then becoming a business owner and I've always worked in big corporates and it was so frustrating at times, like especially being in the position of monitoring the profitability. And I'm like, there's an issue here. And it takes 6 months to resolve it because it needs to go through
Wow.
this management team and that person needs to sign off and the CFO gets involved and the CEO needs to, and there's like it's so slow to, it's kind of like the Titanic, like turning around a huge boat is really hard.
Yes.
When you become a business owner, you're like a speedboat. Like you are so nimble, you can make super quick decisions, turn the thing around so fast,
Mm,
which is, I think, such a superpower of small business. Um, and I loved it. I loved like I see a problem, I can fix it tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
and that was very exciting to see how quickly you can move in a small business. Um, but I mean, I had the same issues. Like you were saying, I knew all those things and I still didn't pay myself very well for 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like working on the assumption that I'm building up something that I can sell and or like things will magically fix themselves next year when I get to, this revenue number.
Mm,
And I think I started paying myself something like $200 a week. And then it just was like nothing. I could just
yeah.
easily afford it. And I was like, why wasn't I doing this from the start? I
Yeah.
just had it in my head, oh, the business can't afford it.
Yeah.
Like I'll keep reinvesting until it can.
And I think the challenge is like startup costs, like depending on what you're doing. Like you said, if you're physical, there's a fit out cost. If your product, there's inventory. Unless you are home-based service. I mean, even then, people spend money on websites and all of
Oh,
the
you can
software
spend
tools
so
and
much on a service-based business still. Yeah.
mm. So I think that in our heads we go like, I've got to invest all of this money up front. Like I don't want to take a wage until I've kind of almost paid that back theoretically. But yeah, I really love the idea of thinking smaller, like go, no, it's got to be structured right from the start, even if it is 50, $100 a week or whatever it is for you, like just being in the habit, because then you can look at it and kind of go, yeah, what is my wage? What is this expenses? What is tax? What is this? And like, what is left? And then it's like, oh, I have a real business now.
Yes, that is so true. If you come out of it in the thinking, and this comes back to profit first as well.
Mm.
Like the principle of profit first is take the profit first and then run your business on what's left. I need to cough too, actually. Let's have
Oh
a
my
cough.
God, do it. Yeah, do it.
Sorry.
No, I love it.
Just get that out.
I know. I'm literally going to blow my nose while we're doing it.
Yes, do it.
How funny. And that's why you have a podcast. Oh my God. And look, so my nose is so red. I blow my nose all of the time and I look like a weirdo. So seriously, just,
Just edit that out.
Yeah, Dan, my podcast editor, he'll be like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" That's
You just
hilarious.
like fix that up in post.
Totally, totally. Now I'm writing it down. Edit out middle. Otherwise, I'll forget. Otherwise, if he forgets that, this will just be a fantastic little side note for everyone. Where it's like, yeah, that's life.
A blooper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
just
God.
real.
Yeah.
Anyway, profit first principles.
Mm.
So yeah, if you don't, and this is human psychology too, like if you've got budget there, you will spend it on something, and it might be a good something, it might be bad something, but you'll spend it like pretty
Mm.
well guaranteed. But if you take the profit first and run your business on what's left, you actually start to realize you can run leaner than you thought. Like me paying myself, I was like, $200 a week, the business, should be able to afford that. The business could easily afford that. Like we got up to doing $500,000 of revenue. Like we could easily afford that. But I was telling myself a story that we couldn't.
Mm.
And then just like running off, I'll just take the scraps that are left at the end. There's no scraps. Just
Yeah.
take it first and then run your business on like what it should be run on, I guess.
Yes, I love that. And that is it. Like, yeah, stop thinking about me, scraps, and whatever's left. It's like, no, I built a business for whatever,
Yeah.
freedom, financial independence, whatever it is. So that is a non-negotiable. That has to happen first. And then the business has to maybe reduce expenses or expand or whatever to meet that objective.
Yeah. Or as well, like maybe the goal is to increase revenue, and then you start to get pretty scrappy with how am I going to increase the revenue, because I want to pay myself $1,000 a week
Yeah.
and I'm $300 off. Like how do we then you actually like start to get motivated. Whereas if you're just like, I don't know how much I can pay myself, like I don't know what our revenue targets are, it becomes very difficult to actually put something in place when you don't have those like goals.
And motivation, like,
Yeah,
almost
exactly.
circling back to the start, like why would you bother running a business that can't afford to pay you?
Yeah, I work with my clients a lot on that, and it's
Mm.
sometimes very interesting to see, especially how women operate. Like we're very like, oh, I can't put my prices up. Like my clients can't afford it. And it's just a story that you're telling yourself. Like I've worked
Totally.
with women who have put their prices up and their clients haven't even said anything. They've just been
Yeah.
like, cool, paid, done. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't an issue. And they're in their mind, they're working themselves up for like 6 months to put their prices up or whatever the thing is. So yeah, sometimes those stories that we're telling ourselves just aren't true. And
Uh,
you
and I
need
think
to,
there's, sorry, you go.
no, I was just going to say, you need to be rewarded. Like business is a risk. You invest, no one's selling a product or a service that they think is shit. Like
Mm.
most women in business have an amazing product or service because they're so conscious that their clients are spending money with them and they want that money to be well spent. Like, I don't think any women in business, at least that I know, are like ripping people off and selling garbage. Like,
Yeah.
selling
And they're
legitimately
usually
amazing.
over delivering as well.
Normally, yes. Yeah, 100%. So the money is well spent. Like
Mm.
their clients are getting good value. But yeah, it's just that piece about a little piece about worthiness, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true. Yeah, it's just, and I find it wild too. A lot of times when women have a corporate career and they go into running it, so maybe they were a HR person or like finance or whatever, it's like they forget that they were an expert and like the best
Yes.
at what they did for like
Yeah.
a decade or 2 decades or however long. It's like you didn't lose any of that expertise when you started your own business. Like you are still a senior, highly valuable, highly whatever person. You should charge accordingly.
Mm. It's
Mm,
so interesting the difference, especially between men and women. Like I work with women.
mm,
I just feel like women are really under-supported, especially in the finance space.
yeah,
But there was this research around like women and applying for jobs. And if a woman had like, she needed to have 75% of the skills that required before she
yeah,
would apply. And men, it was like they'd had like one or two of the skills, and then they were just like, I could do that and apply. Whereas women needed to look at the job description and be super confident that they could actually, do that job.
yeah.
They would even apply. So it's just the mentality between men and women is so different.
Mm.
I think that really comes through in business too. Like if I was working with a man and I was like, you need to double your prices, he'd be like, done. Whereas a woman would be like, I can't do that. My clients can't afford it. Like I just, no, I couldn't do that. It's super interesting.
Yeah, and I love how we project our own crap onto our
Yeah,
clients. Like the my clients couldn't afford that. It's like they probably can. It's actually you that has the block that you wouldn't pay that, or you don't have the money, or you're not seeing the value, which is a huge problem. But it was interesting. Someone shared a tactic with me for that, to help women bridge that gap, which was, okay, if you're worried about raising your prices, you raise them for all of your new clients. So
yes,
as soon as you start seeing, oh, actually everyone's just jumping on this new price, so now I go, okay, well I can actually have permission to tell the rest of them that we're moving to this new pricing model or whatever. So it's a nice way to see that people will pay it first, to get the proof, get the
definitely.
evidence
Yeah, if your
before you
prices
raise.
aren't like published, it's so
Mm,
I do that with my clients too. I'm like, just when the new client comes on, and
yeah.
you don't even have to raise the prices of an OG client. Like,
Mm,
I think sometimes it's nice to reward someone who's taken a chance on you before you had amazing Google reviews or testimonials.
yeah.
Like, you can keep your OG clients' prices as is, like, you don't have to increase them. But I think a lot of people in business as well forget the basic economic principles of like supply and demand. Like
Mm,
if you're a consultant, especially, there's only one of you. So the supply is low. And if
yes.
the demand to work with you is like, but you're still charging, like you need to increase your prices to level out the demand.
Yeah. And also, like, what is that profit goal? What does my salary goal look like? Therefore, how many customers do I need? Is this actually serviceable? Like, if I want to make that much money, how many clients do I need? Can I actually physically deliver
You're
on
like,
that
how
as
many
well?
hours a day of client work is that? And can I
Yeah.
actually do it? Yeah.
Or do I want to do it? Like, it's all very well and say, well, I could, if I worked for 12 hours a day every day, I could hit that revenue goal. It's like, yeah, but you'd be miserable.
Yeah,
So,
well, double your prices and work 6 hours a day and then
yes,
pick up the kids.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. I could talk to you about this all day. So, but we better not. Let's wrap up this podcast with one last piece of advice. So, reflecting on your time in multiple businesses, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to another woman on her business journey?
Yeah, I think read Profit First. I've said it like 20 times in this
I'll
episode,
link
but
it.
just
Gonna link it.
love the principles of it. It makes so much sense and it really does work when you implement it. And then also think of your business not as like a charity, like you're running a business, you need to pay yourself, and that's not gross. It's not yuck. Like, I think a lot of women, especially like we've just discussed, feel a bit weird about charging for their time. And like, even though you were saying like they might have, if they were going for a job, they would be fine to be like, the salary expectation is 150 grand. Whereas when they're working for themselves, they're like, oh, I'll just take, $50 an hour or whatever it is. And that for some reason, moving from like being employed to working for yourself, the mentality really shifts, where
Mm.
I would love more women to maintain the mentality of I'm providing a service, it's very valuable and it's worth it. Because you wouldn't go to work for free or for $20 an hour or $50 a week. Like, there's no way. So I think switch the mentality to your business is not you, it's separate from you. You're working for your business
Mm.
and your clients are getting a valuable product or service, whatever you're selling, and that you should see the value in that yourself.
Oh, I love it so much, Amy. You are incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with the Spark community. That was so good.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. I could talk about it all day as well.